So, hello everyone. We are starting at this point because there have been some technical issues, you might say. You may even see some video glitches as we go. So, this is the next Let's Play on this channel and the next step in my Final Fantasy marathon thing, cycle, whatever you want to call it. To any potential new viewers, it is my habit to first present the game and just not exactly summarize plot and everything, just talk about why I want to cover the game on the channel and just what I think about it and why, yeah, just some good points and bad points, just a basic general analysis, not exactly review kind of a thing. So yeah, that is what I am going to do, and I have to say, this may be a very long story. By the way, fun fact, this is one of very few games that I have actually bought 3 different copies of. 2 physical, by the way. I first bought it when it came out on the PlayStation 2. It was a system seller for me. I thought, well, this looked interesting. I'll just get the PlayStation 2 instead of the Sega Dreamcast. And yeah, as you can probably see now, I have apparently a mod enabled. I don't know how I managed that, but I do. I'm not quite sure what I use it for, to be perfectly honest. Well, anyway, I was going to talk about the game and the reasons. Yes, there are a plural of them that, well, I don't know if I should say that that this game is important to me, but I have a healthy respect for it. See, my history with Final Fantasy, I think it really started with Final Fantasy VIII, to be perfectly honest. I know Final Fantasy VIII was the newest Final Fantasy at the time I got into the series. And I certainly loved Final Fantasy VIII the first few times I played it. I think I have explained on more than one occasion why I will not do Final Fantasy VIII on the channel. So I'll just leave it at that. It's not going to happen. End of story. So I really got my sort of baseline understanding of what a Final Fantasy experience is from Final Fantasy XII. And, well, as you might say, one thing led to another, and I just then got into I got to play Final Fantasy VI. And I mean, those 3 games, they were just fantastic. Okay, well, yeah, maybe not exactly technically masterful, but well, they're good games, good story, good music. I have different opinions of Final Fantasy VIII now, like I've suggested, but at the time, I loved all those 3 games. Final Fantasy at that time was just a guarantee for a good experience. And then came Final Fantasy IX. it was only playable on the PlayStation. I did not have a PlayStation because the Sega Saturn is the best console ever. Shut up and fight me. Also, Shining Force 3. So, yeah. I did actually buy the game for the PlayStation though, even if I didn't have the console. I borrowed my cousin's PlayStation, and then I experimented with emulation. I think I'll just not say anymore, so the YouTube gods won't be too wroth with me. And while I really didn't get into the story, I did not like the music. That game was just so much fun to play. And, well, I guess you could say that my... oh, wait, no, I'm not quite ready for that yet. So, fast forward, Final Fantasy X releases on the PlayStation 2. I get the PlayStation 2. Well, I think I actually got it before PlayStation Final Fantasy X release. I know I must have played like Shadow of Memories or something. Not Shadow of the Colossus, Shadow of Memories, the goofy adventure title where you just die all the freaking time. But yeah, I got Final Fantasy X on release date, and what a different experience this was. Gone was the ATB, so yeah, if you for some reason did not know this already, Final Fantasy X is purely turn-based, just like Final Fantasy I. Okay, well that's not exactly accurate, to be perfectly honest, now that I think about it. But no one's going to jump out and stab you in the face if you, like, don't press, well, if you just sit there and try to decide if you're going to use a potion or chuck an antidote at a zombie cleric or something just for shits and giggles. This game is entirely turn-based, purely turn-based, with a dynamic turn order. Okay, fair enough, but still. That alone will actually appeal a lot to me, to be honest. I do like to take my time sometimes and just not be stressed to make choices. Have to make unfortunate choices at the wrong time. But the music, this bit they play here, I forget the name of the title. Is it just Sanarkand? I mean, there's a lot of pretty music in this game. Let's just not beat around the bush. There are some really fantastic music on the soundtrack. I don't agree with everyone's listed favorites, but I do have my favorites, and yeah, they really are some of the musical high points in the entire franchise, if you ask me. Maybe not the absolute best, but it's good. It's a solid showing by Nobuo Uematsu and everyone else who pitched in. Yeah, Junya Nakano and Masashi Hamauzu, of course. But it is stylistically chaotic. All of these composers have their own styles, and while I actually, of the three mentioned, I think there were four actually who did music for this game, I do actually prefer Hamauzu, but hey, I'm not gonna knock anyone else. This time, Hamauzu is more of my jazz. But that all comes down to say that there's also a number of tracks that I do not like. I won't say that I hate them, but I do not like them. intensely. I may expand on that as as it becomes relevant. Might not. But yeah, there are some really good moments in this game, and I will actually try to do a compilation of just some great moments in this game that I just felt. I mean, that just, I wouldn't say got to me, but I mean, I meant that I got into the feel of the story, the action and things. I don't always do that playing a game. I always kind of know that I am playing a video game. But some of those moments here in this very game, I sort of felt like I really was, I mean, like I might have been there in person myself, and nice. That's something I wish more games would achieve. But yeah, it's not like we're lacking for choice in this day and age. Oh yeah, one thing about the soundtrack actually, the final boss music, and I don't mean against the final Aeon. I mean the stuff after that. Absolute killer. Probably the final boss battle theme that I enjoy the most in the entire series, and well, it might not be as iconic as One Winged Angel or whatever whatever it is that's going on in Final Fantasy VIII. It certainly beats the tar out of Final Fantasy IX, and well, I mean, there are a lot of design-wise great things about Dancing Mad as well, of course. But yeah, it just feels more intense in a way, this final boss fight, that I just feel is very appropriate. Now, then we come to the thing that Final Fantasy X is sort of where my interest in the series peaked. I mean, after 10 came Final Fantasy XI, which was a multiplayer-only game, and I just thought, but what are you doing? You're like a single-player role-playing narrative something. And I never played Final Fantasy XI. I think I tried the demo, gave the benchmark tool a try. My PC did not perform to ideal levels, by the way. Wow. Those were the days, man. I think I had a Voodoo 2 in my PC at the time. A whopping 12 megabytes of VRAM, you know? The hottest of the hottest stuff. Right. And then came Final Fantasy XII. I understand that that game had a rather tumultuous development cycle. That's always unfortunate to hear. And while I will admit that at least the final boss theme in that game is really good as well, I think Final Fantasy XII is my least favorite game in the series that I have played to completion. I will note that this does not include Final Fantasy V. I did try Final Fantasy V as well, yes. Let's just clear our throats a bit demonstratively. But I did not complete that game. if I would have completed it, I'm pretty sure I would rate that game lower than Final Fantasy XII. But there are things to say about Final Fantasy XII. And they are mostly nice. Some of them. I mean, a lot of bad points lots of points that I personally think are bad. But at the end of the day, it is a solid game. For all that the development cycle was chaotic, may have been chaotic, they put out a solid, fully functioning game. I don't think there were any glitches or game-breaking bugs, just damn solid work. And then came Final Fantasy XIII. And that's when I started feeling kind of, oh god. But then, I actually got to play it, and when it comes to the distribution of focus between following the story and goofing off on doing side quests, Final Fantasy XIII absolutely nails it where I'm concerned. It is the Final Fantasy game that is the most tailored to my preferences as a gamer. And I do like the game for that. I'm not gonna cover the game on this channel though. I think it's such a popular game, modern and everything. Lots of people will have done it to death already. I just don't wanna clog YouTube with Final Fantasy XIII stuff. But that was a return to form. And then came Final Fantasy XIII 2. I actually shelled out for the collector's edition of that game, and regrets. Big regrets. Then I tried, okay, no, that's not true. I bought Lightning Returns, played that to completion, and I will admit that I thought some of the ideas that they introduced in that game really were a breath of fresh air. Revolutionary in a way, sure, but maybe not stuff that I enjoyed. And then came Final Fantasy XIV, another MMORPG, and I thought, oh well, sure, I'm just gonna go play Xenosaga again then. Just play some good RPGs, you know? When you have good RPGs to play until the next nice RPG comes out. So yeah, I actually did try Final Fantasy XIV, but yeah, just online role-playing games, just not my thing. It's an instant, well, I wouldn't say deal breaker, but if you present me with a purely online role-playing game experience, I'm just going to shrug and move on, which I did with Final Fantasy XIV. I have heard good things about A Realm Reborn and everything else that they've done with it since then. Full respect for Square, full respect to Square for that. But I, well, have not experienced any of it. I can't really weigh in on it personally. And I really wish I remembered his name. The guy who somehow got the mess that is Final Fantasy XV together and managed to bring the team to produce a game that worked well enough to release. Hajime Tabata. Yeah. There is no one ever connected to Square except maybe Nobuo Uematsu that I have as much respect for as Hajime Tabata for achieving what he did. Say what you want about Final Fantasy XV, I probably agree with most of it. I did have a good time playing it. It's not, as you might say, return to form, but the summons, oh wow, they were spectacular. Yeah. I think I actually want to say a few things about the Final Fantasy VII Remake as well. See, when I, of course, played Final Fantasy VII back in the day, it was a special feeling to the various story beats, right? You sort of feel on edge as you walked through the Shinra Tower, walked up through the Shinra skyscraper in Midgar. Felt the unease in the Shinra mansion in Nibelheim, and just the sense of determination when you go through the final dungeon. I felt a lot of the same things in Final Fantasy VII Remake. I mean, when they went through the same story beats, I felt today what I felt when I played the same bits of Final Fantasy VII back in the late 90s. And I'm impressed. The game might have its weak points, but I'm in no way going to say it is a bad game. It is definitely a worthwhile experience. It is not the same as Final Fantasy VII, of course. It's not a complete game for starters. Well, not a complete story. But I am very, very interested in where that game is going to go. So we'll see what happens after the Final Fantasy VII Remake project concludes. Maybe I'll just not go back to Final Fantasy ever again. Or maybe I'll stick with it. I think Final Fantasy XVI will be the sort of test, if you will, for that. But Final Fantasy VII Remake, definitely. Now, for some reason, one of the producers went out and said that Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy VII are canonically linked as universes, game worlds. So Final Fantasy X would then be the prequel to Final Fantasy VII somehow? I don't know, but that is straight from Square's mouth, so to speak. So, Final Fantasy X, it is a thing. And that is what is coming next. I like the game. I hate the minigames with a passion. And that is a very strongly contributing factor to why Final Fantasy X-2 is not going to grace this channel at any point. Yeah, I think this has been my longest presentation before a new Let's Play starts. I should also warn you that I'm actually, it seems, only able to play this through my Elgato game capture device as a primary monitor thing. Maybe if I would have made the rendering output borderless maximized window, it would have worked better. But what this means is that inputs will have a delay to them. There is, of course, the Chocobo races, and, well, I mean, you could sort of get past that and not perform excellently. But then there is that part in the Mount Gaia set, if I remember correctly, where you have to time throwing your ball. I think I will eventually get it, but yeah, it's not gonna be a good showing. Just don't expect great gameplay here. Just me reminiscing about the game. And yeah, that is it for this presentation. Stay tuned, and yeah, in the next episode I will start to actually play the game. Until then.